I celebrated Hiroshima. I sat on the hood of a Jeep, drunk, playing drums, while 100,000 people burned. I'm not proud of that, but it's the truth. And if I'm going to tell you about Johnny, about what separated us, I have to start with my own shame. Because Johnny didn't celebrate. He didn't need to. For him, Hiroshima wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. Let me tell you what happened that day, and what happened after. August 6th, 1945. The news reached Los Alamos in the afternoon. Someone ran through the tech area shouting, "Hiroshima! The bomb worked. The war is over." Within minutes, people were pouring out of the buildings. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, everyone. There was cheering. There was crying. There was chaos. And then there were parties. Parties that started before sunset and didn't stop until morning. People got drunk. People danced. People laughed, like they hadn't laughed in years. I was 27 years old. I had just spent 2 years calculating how to build the most destructive weapon in human history. And when I heard the news, I felt elation. Pure elation. That night, I sat on the hood of a Jeep and played drums. I beat those drums with everything I had, drunk and laughing, while the desert air cooled around us. The whole laboratory was celebrating. We had done the impossible. We had won. But Johnny wasn't at the party. I remember looking around for him that night. You couldn't miss Johnny at a party. He was always the loudest one in the room, always telling jokes, always with a drink in his hand. But not that night. Someone told me he was in his office, working. On the night we won the war, Johnny was already calculating what came next. That should have told me something, but I was too drunk to notice. Here's what I didn't think about that night. At the exact same moment I was playing drums, people were dying in Hiroshima. Not quickly, not cleanly. They were burning. They were stumbling through rubble with their skin hanging off. They were watching their children die. I was involved with this happy thing, drinking and drunk and playing drums, running all over Los Alamos with excitement, at the same time as people were dying and struggling in Hiroshima. I've said those words many times since. I've tried to hold both things in my mind at once, the party and the hell, the celebration and the suffering. I still can't do it. The contrast is too enormous. The human mind isn't built to hold both at the same time. But Johnny's mind was different. Johnny could hold both. He could calculate the death toll and then go to dinner. He could design the optimal height for maximum destruction and then tell a dirty joke. His mind didn't work like mine. That's not a criticism. That's just a fact. You have to understand Johnny's role in all of this. He wasn't just another physicist at Los Alamos. He was on the Target Selection Committee. That's not a metaphor. That's what it was actually called. A committee that selected targets. Cities. Human beings. The committee met 3 times in the spring of 1945. Washington. Los Alamos. Washington. Again. Johnny sat in those rooms with generals and scientists, looking at maps of Japan. They had a list of cities: Kyoto, Yokohama, Kokura, Niigata, Hiroshima. They discussed each city like engineers discussing a construction project. Population density, industrial value, geography, weather patterns. Hiroshima had mountains nearby. The committee noted that these mountains would focus the blast wave, concentrate the destruction. They wrote this down as an advantage. The documents from those meetings still exist. You can read them. The language is clinical, precise. They talk about soft targets. That meant wooden houses, paper walls, the flimsy structures that Japanese civilians lived in. They meant people. Johnny's specific job was the calculations, the expected yield of the bomb, the estimated death toll, and most importantly, the optimal height of detonation. See, a bomb does more damage if it explodes in the air rather than on the ground. When the shock wave hits the earth, it reflects back upward. Where the original wave meets the reflected wave, you get something called a Mach stem. A wall of pressure moving outward. much more destructive than a simple blast. But the height has to be precise, too high, and the pressure dissipates before it reaches the ground. Too low, and you waste energy digging a crater. Johnny calculated the exact altitude that would maximize destruction. 1,900 feet for Hiroshima, 1,650 feet for Nagasaki. These were not rough estimates. These were precise calculations designed to kill as many people as possible. Johnny found the mathematical optimum for mass death, and he did it the same way he did everything else. Quickly, precisely, without apparent emotion. I could not have done that. Not because I was more moral. I celebrated Hiroshima, remember? But because my mind does not work that way. I would have seen the faces. Johnny saw the numbers. After the war, something strange happened to me. I left Los Alamos, and I went to Cornell to teach. Back to normal life, back to civilization. And I fell apart. I was sitting in a restaurant in New York, looking out the window, watching people on the street, normal people, living their normal lives. And I started calculating. I looked at the buildings and thought about the Hiroshima blast radius. I knew exactly how big that radius was. I had helped calculate it. I thought, if a bomb hit 34th Street, how far would the destruction spread? Would it reach us here? How many blocks would be vaporized? How many people would die in the first second? I watched construction workers building a bridge, and I thought they were crazy. They just did not understand. Why are they making new things? It felt so useless. Everything was going to be destroyed. I was certain of it. While I was falling apart in New York, Johnny was thriving in Washington. He was not sitting in restaurants having existential crises. He was advising the government. He was on committees. He was calculating how to build bigger bombs, better missiles, faster computers. The same week I could not stop seeing mushroom clouds. Johnny was probably in a meeting somewhere, explaining to generals how to win the next war. I heard stories about him during that time. Always busy, always moving, always calculating. Someone asked him once if he ever thought about the people who died in Hiroshima. He said thinking about it would not bring them back, and not thinking about it would not kill them again. So why think about it? That is Johnny. Pure logic. No room for guilt. I walked around for months like this, maybe a year, looking at everything through the lens of the bomb. Every building was temporary. Every bridge was pointless. Every person was already dead. They just did not know it yet. I was not being rational. I know that now, but at the time, it felt like I was the only one who understood. Everyone else was sleepwalking toward annihilation. Only I could see what was coming. It was a kind of depression, maybe from the bomb, maybe from something else. My wife died a month before Trinity. Arline had tuberculosis. She was 25 years old. I went back to work the next day. I threw myself into the calculations. I did not let myself feel it. And when the war ended, when there was nothing left to run toward, everything caught up with me at once. The grief, the guilt, the weight of what we had done. Here is what I realized years later. My sin was not building the bomb. My sin was not thinking. When I joined the project in 1943, the reason was clear. Germany might get the bomb first. If the Nazis had nuclear weapons, civilization was over. I had to help stop that. That reason made sense. I believed it. I still believe it. But Germany surrendered in May 1945. The war in Europe was over. The reason I started was gone, and not a single thought came to my mind about that. I just kept working, kept calculating, kept building the bomb that would be dropped on Japan. I drifted. I stopped asking why. I was so caught up in the work, so focused on solving the problem, that I forgot to ask whether the problem had changed. Johnny never drifted. That's the difference between us. Johnny thought about everything clearly. He understood exactly what he was doing. He just came to different conclusions. See, I drifted into building the bomb for Japan. I didn't think. Johnny thought. He thought clearly and decided that dropping the bomb was right, that building bigger bombs was right, that preparing for the next war was right. You can disagree with his conclusions, but you can't say he didn't think about it. In 1950, Johnny said something to a journalist that became infamous. Infamous, really. He was talking about the Soviet Union, about the inevitability of conflict between the superpowers. He said, "With the Russians, it is not a question of whether but when." War was coming. That's what Johnny believed. Not probably. Certainly. And if war was certain, the only rational choice was to win it quickly. Then he said this, "If you say why not bomb them tomorrow, I say why not today. If you say today at 5 o'clock, I say why not 1 o'clock." He was talking about a nuclear first strike on Moscow, a preventive war, destroy the Soviet Union before they could threaten us. He said this out loud, to journalists. He meant every word. I couldn't think like that, not because I was more moral than Johnny. I don't think I was. I celebrated Hiroshima too. I couldn't think like that because my mind doesn't work that way. When I imagine nuclear war, I see the people, the faces, the children. I can't turn them into numbers. The images overwhelm me. Johnny could turn anything into numbers. That was his gift. The same gift that let him solve impossible equations in seconds also let him calculate optimal death tolls without flinching. His mind was faster than his feelings, maybe faster than his conscience. Oppenheimer was different from both of us. Oppenheimer felt the weight and kept working anyway. He built the bomb. He watched the Trinity test and thought of the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. After the war, he went to see President Truman. He told Truman that he felt he had blood on his hands. Truman was furious. He told an aide afterward that he never wanted to see that crybaby again. But Oppenheimer couldn't let go. He spent the rest of his life warning about nuclear weapons, speaking out against the arms race, trying to put the genie back in the bottle. They destroyed him for it, took his security clearance, called him a traitor, humiliated him in public hearings. Johnny testified at those hearings. He defended Oppenheimer's loyalty, but he never agreed with Oppenheimer's doubts. He never understood why Oppenheimer couldn't just move on. Here's what I've learned from watching both of them. There is no right way to carry the bomb. Oppenheimer carried it like a cross. He let it crush him. He spent his life atoning for something that couldn't be atoned. Johnny carried it like a tool. He used it, improved it, built bigger ones, never looked back. I carried it like a wound. It bled for a while, then it scarred over. I went back to physics. I found joy again, but the scar never disappeared. None of us was right. None of us was wrong. We just responded differently to something that no human being should ever have to carry. Johnny died in 1957. Cancer. It was probably from the radiation at all those test sites. The same weapons he helped create were killing him from the inside. At the end, the military posted guards outside his hospital room. They were afraid he might babble classified secrets in his delirium. Even dying, Johnny knew too much. But Johnny did not speak English in those final weeks. He spoke Hungarian, the language of his childhood, the language his mother used when he was a little boy in Budapest, before the mathematics, before Los Alamos, before he calculated how to destroy a city. They say he was terrified at the end. The man who had calculated death so precisely was afraid to die himself. A priest came to visit him. Johnny had never been religious, but facing death, he wanted to believe in something more than numbers. I think about that sometimes. Johnny's mind, that incredible machine, finally hitting a problem it could not solve. His own mortality. The one equation with no answer. I went on living. I went back to physics. I fell in love again. I taught students. I won a Nobel Prize. I played bongos and cracked safes and told jokes and found joy in the world. The depression lifted. The visions of mushroom clouds faded. I was wrong about the war coming. Decades passed. The bombs stayed in their silos. The cities I imagined burning are still standing. Life went on. That's the strange thing. After everything, life just went on. But I never forgot that night on the Jeep. Drunk, laughing, playing drums, while Hiroshima burned. I was 27 years old. I did not think about what I was celebrating. I did not think about the people dying at that exact moment. I did not think about anything except victory. That's the thing about being young. You can do terrible things without feeling them. The weight comes later, sometimes years later, sometimes it never comes at all. Johnny's weight never seemed to come. He calculated and moved on, built bigger bombs, planned bigger wars, died before his conscience could catch him. Or maybe his conscience caught him at the very end, in that hospital room, speaking Hungarian, terrified of death, asking for a priest. I'll never know. Here's what I want you to understand. We were not monsters. Johnny was not a monster. I was not a monster. Oppenheimer was not a monster. We were human beings. Brilliant, flawed, ordinary human beings who found ourselves building the most terrible weapon in history. Some of us celebrated. Some of us despaired. Some of us kept building. Some of us tried to stop. None of us knew how to carry what we had done. I celebrated Hiroshima. I sat on a jeep and played drums while people burned. And then I spent months paralyzed by guilt and despair. Johnny never celebrated. He just kept calculating. He never stopped calculating. Not until the cancer stopped him. Which of us was right? Which of us handled it better? I do not know. I have thought about it for 40 years, and I still do not know. Maybe there is no right way to carry the bomb. Maybe you just carry it however you can, and hope you do not drop it. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe. I tell stories like this about the real lives of the scientists who changed our world. I'll see you in the next one.